All right, it's now 21 minutes after 8. It's time for us to have the segment we call Black and White. Now, Black and White is where we discuss matters social. And today we're going to be talking about FGM, female genital mutilation, which we know in Kenya has been a challenge. We've had different legislators championing and ensuring that that is something that becomes a thing of the past, particularly because there's some cultures that have held on to it very, very strongly. Now, this is not just a problem or a challenge that we have in Kenya, but generally in Africa. So that's the discussion that we're going to be having. And this is on the backdrop of a meeting that is going to be held by AMREF, where they've brought together champions from different parts of Africa to have this discussion and possibly look at the milestones that have been made in that regard. Allow me to now introduce the panel that we have this morning. I'll start with my extreme left, and we have Hiwot Girma, who's a clinical pharmacist and FGM advocate in Ethiopia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're also joined by Peter Ngura, who's a director and FGM Center at Excellence of AMREF Health Africa. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And last but not least, we are joined by Honorable Evelyn Chemtai, Member of Parliament, Boko District, Eastern Uganda. Thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here this day.
All right, fantastic. Now, let me start with you, Hiwot, on possibly just your experience as an FGM champion in Ethiopia. What is your experience of what goes on in Ethiopia in regards to FGM?
In our country, it is still a problem. So what I did was, since I'm volunteering in AMREF, I'm working with AMREF Youth Advisory Parliament as a volunteer. So we went to the projects that are that is done by the AMREF Health Africa, in one of the projects, and I went to the countryside of Ethiopia, and I met with the female armies, women development armies, and I had a one-on-one meeting with them, and I've asked how the problem was serious, if it was serious enough, the impact, and I've checked with them since, whether they were aware of the long-term complications of FGM and the short-term complications of FGM. So I made sure they were fully aware of the problem. Okay,
let me come to you, Mheshimiwa, as we say in Kenya, Honorable. Is it the same in Uganda? How prevalent is the FGM issue or challenge?
For the sake of Uganda, especially in Pokot and Sebei sub-region, it has come down. But still, we still have pockets who are still practicing FGM. And it's the reason we still need to sensitize the community. The government has taken a step to have a law, an act that helps to ban FGM, to punish those people who practice it. But of course, not everybody is aware of the law. Others are ignorant. And that's why we still need to do a lot.
Okay, let me come to you, Peter. And when this AMREF put these people together as champions, is that because there was possibly a thread that runs through Africa that possibly AMREF identified, and so that maybe bringing them together would be more effective than having individuals working in separate places?
Yeah, we realized that FGM actually is a big global problem with over 200 million girls and women living with it, and majority of these are in Africa. Over 91 million are in Africa. Every year, over 3 million girls in Africa are at risk of FGM. And we realized that it's so important to have the community champions and their communities take ownership and leadership of ending FGM. And the best way to do it is to have the people themselves do it and take leadership, lead discussions that are non-judgmental about female genital mutilation. That's why we are bringing in the champions for their training, so that they can be, they can have the information to be able to pass to their communities and actually advocate with their religious leaders, community leaders, and also bring in more champions and mentor them so that we can raise the voices of Africa to end FGM in this generation.
All right, what would you say is one of the biggest challenges you find in Ethiopia in tackling the issue of FGM?
I would say the cultural issue is the main problem there, because if you don't get your child mutilated, nobody would want to marry the child. So even the mothers they want to do it.
Absolutely. And is that in certain communities, or is that generally amongst all communities in Ethiopia?
Basically in all communities in Ethiopia.
Okay.
And basically in countrysides.
And how much stigma is attached to that, to a point where do the girls also now want to get involved by virtue of the fact that maybe it's already been, they've been schooled that if you're not mutilated, then you're not either worth it or not good enough for marriage?
Yeah, well, everybody have a thought that if a girl is not mutilated, maybe she won't get married and stuff like that. I'm sorry to say that. Anyways, but in schools, teachers have been telling them the bad effects, the complications, and have been awareing them. So it's now getting better.
It's getting better.
Yeah.
All right. Honorable Chemtai, is that the same case? Is it the same challenge in Uganda? Could it be cultural, or are there other maybe challenges that are underlying?
Yeah, it has been majorly cultural, but now what's happening is the peer pressure. Because what happened last year was out of a group of men and women who are supposed to have gone for a celebration, and there's a culture that you have to go for a specific celebration, especially the cutting of the men. So you must go with a circumcised woman. So some men went ahead to borrow other women from other families who have circumcised girls, or wives rather. So last year we had ladies or women who were circumcised. Most of them were married women.
Who went for that?
Yeah, for the acts, because they wanted to fulfill the culture that when you're going to participate in the real circumcision culture for the men, you must go when you also participated. So the women went ahead to accept to be mutilated. Then in my district, Bukwo, that happened in Kwen district, because in Sabisa region we have 3. In Bukwo, others said they were influenced by the mutilators, the surgeons. There's the particular 3 girls that I met. One was a woman with 4 children and a young girl of 15 years. She said the surgeon came and convinced her and asked her to accept to be mutilated so she can be a real woman. She said she lost her consciousness and accepted. And of course, the government took over and were arrested because the law is in place. And as I speak, I think 2 of them are still in prison serving because of the act.
Because of the act?
Yeah, but the surgeon ran away. I think she crossed to the side of Kenya. You know, we live at the border. So I think she came to the side of West Pokot. And that is why we really want the champions on the Kenyan side, the women, to stand up and refuse this act.
Right.
Because we've tried to have it erased from the Ugandan side, but our people cross over to the Kenyan side because we are one community, the Pokot community and the Sabots.
And they can easily get away with it.
Yeah, okay. they do, yeah.
All right. Hiwot, I'll come to you, Peter, in just a bit. But Hiwot, what's the legal framework that supports what you're doing in Ethiopia? Is there a legal framework?
Yeah, currently there has been a roadmap that has been applying to our country these days. It has been inaugurated by our honorable president, and now the roadmap is a tool to be applied to our country strategies, so that to end FGM worldwide. I mean country side. Okay. So it's like because 24 million Ethiopians, I mean women and children, are already affected by FGM. So the problem is big. So everybody's helping the UN FPA. So we're doing.
So there is a legal framework that supports that, because in Kenya it's also illegal. Peter, the danger sometimes is to have these discussions in boardrooms and urban centers, and that's not where FGM is happening. It's happening in the rural areas. What is the organization doing, AMREF? What is AMREF doing to ensure that this information and initiatives that are being created percolate to the place where it's actually happening?
We are actually working with communities. We have community programs that we work with community leaders because we need to break the social norm that shows FGM as the way to go. We need to create a new norm. So we have been working with communities so that they can create new norms or new traditions like the alternative rites of passage. We've been working with the Maasai in Kenya and community in Kenya and Tanzania, whereby they break the new norm and they create the awareness that girls have rights and women have rights. And we also work with religious leaders because it's so important to de-link FGM from religion because many communities think that it's a religious requirement.
Correct.
So it's so important to do that. We also work with legal, institutions like the security committees, the Nyumba Kumi, because we have the laws like all countries are saying they have the laws. In Kenya, we have it since 2011, but FGM is still going on. So the enactment of the law, the enforcement, the enforcement of the law is a challenge because people, even gathering the evidence or the confidence of people to come and stand against it, even reporting, is a big barrier. So AMREF is actually working. Like now, we are very happy. The Kajiado County, we've been working with them and also with other stakeholders in Kajiado to ensure that Kajiado County owns, owns the national anti-FGM law so that they form their own, develop their own county anti-FGM policy. They have done that and soon they'll be launching. So we help the counties and communities to own the anti-FGM law. We train their champions so that they can be able to reach other people, support community initiatives. And we've also launched an End FGM Center of Excellence so that we can initiate multi-sector partnerships. We bring in, partners who have not been into this, working together like the private sector, so that we need a multi-sector coordination
that can support that. And maybe some of the challenges that we go through, and maybe we'll hear from the other countries, but even in Kenya, I do know that we have a lady, for that matter, a doctor who's actually gone to court to try and make it legal for whoever wants to go for FGM to go, because she's putting it as discrimination if they're not, they don't go through that. How do we overcome those challenges? Because we have those who are proponents, and we're not just talking about people in the village. This is somebody who is well, educated, well informed, and even has gone a step further to even go to court and try and challenge the fact that it's illegal in Kenya.
I would say changing social norms is a challenge. FGM is a social norm. It is a practice that has been practiced for years and centuries. So we expect that there will be challenges, even from very informed communities or individuals. But what we need to understand is that we have ending FGM is actually a global commitment. We have the UN declaration to end FGM. It was done in 2012. We have the Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 5 is actually targeting on this, that we need to end all forms of discrimination against women. It's a discrimination, actually. Men are not subjected.
But her argument is that if men want to go for the cut, they do. And if women want to go for the cut, why don't they? So I don't know how it comes in under discrimination, but according to her, that there is discrimination in that sense, that if somebody wants to go, then it's up to them.
I think the main focus should be to celebrate the key milestones and the global commitment, and even the regional African Charter. They have a charter on ending all forms of violations against women. Recently we had an interministerial declaration where East African and Ethiopia countries are coming together to end FGM, FGM against in cross-border. So I think the main thing is to know that regardless of the challenges we may face and the obstacles that they may come up, FGM is a gross violation against human rights. And the world, this actually ending FGM is not a campaign, it's a global commitment. The world has put it to pen and paper, it's from their hearts that it's time we stop, violation against women and girls. And this is not going to change. It is actually, it's going to strengthen the kind of global commitment and national. Even we have the national registration, the laws that really outlaw FGM. So we expect these challenges to come, but the global commitment is bigger, and actually the momentum will peak and peak because scientific facts show that really there's no benefits
in FGM. Let me come to you, Honorable Chemtai. What approach do you use in Uganda? Because you're dealing with a social, like what he refers to as a social norm. And by virtue of that, you'll have proponents who will argue that, first of all, this is a culture that we have always had as Africans. So why are we taking, quote unquote, the white man's culture and changing ours in exchange for what? It's something that we have always done. And the danger in this is that if they do not understand and the governments make it illegal, is that now it goes to what we'd call the backside of it. They will do the FGM backstreet, which is worse, because now the dangers, of course, are heightened. What approach are you using in Uganda?
What we're doing is we now have key champions, especially the Parliament of Uganda. We have the Speaker herself, Rebecca Kadaka, Honorable. Every year, November 1st of every year, she comes to our communities and we have a culture, it's called a Culture Day. We celebrate the positive cultures that we need to embrace, and then we keep speaking to our people about the negative impacts of FGM. And actually, let me go back to what you've just asked about a lady who was taken, who was going to court. I'm told she's not from the communities that practice FGM. So one, she doesn't know what it means. As we speak now, we have women that we are trying to counsel them because they are tortured after the trauma of the FGM. And there are so many effects. One, we have fistula. The women are suffering if they're not well handled during the whole process. Secondly, the issue of HIV and AIDS, because they used to use one knife and it's one person who cuts. Even if you say you're going to use different knives, there are always like 10 girls and it's one person to cut them. And the issue of HIV, it wasn't there those days. And the world has changed and we really have to move with the world. And my sister there who is taking the whole thing going to court, I really feel sorry. And I call on the women of Kenya to stand against it and tell her, let her know that she is fighting fellow women.
How do you handle the communities that feel that this is an infringement of their culture? It is something that does not belong to us that we're trying to bring on board. How do you handle those?
What we've done is to sensitize them on the positive side of the culture, because they said, one, it was something to bring them together as a community and as a tribe. So we have so many activities that are carried during the whole cutting. It's not about the cutting. There's dancing, there's celebration, there's being together. So we've embraced, we've told them to come, make cook the local food, eat, talk, have stories, sing, and do the other positive side. Then we've also encouraged them to embrace the boy child. We can have the culture done on the boy child, but the girl child should be left aside. Because it doesn't just affect them even education-wise. Once you are cut, they no longer go back to school. Yes, and it always happens at the age of 14, 15, 16. And I'm one of the survivors, and I know what it means. All my friends who did it never made it to school. They end up dropping. The moment you are cut, that is the end of you. Yet we need people to go to school. We need the girl child to go to school. Yeah.
All right. Coming to you, Hiwot, do you have the same challenges where you find communities are so attached to their culture that bringing in this literally would be a culture change becomes a challenge because they feel this is not what they have always done? And how do you overcome that?
Yeah, it is always a challenge because they've experienced that for like centuries, like you said. So it it's always a challenge, but what we did was we recruited a girls group, as in like they have groups so that they advocate for the other girls not to be cut. So it worked. So that's how we overcome the challenge.
And do you have people who possibly you leave to influence and enforce? Because it's one thing to have a community come together and have a gathering and everybody nods their head and says yes, but once you leave, you still have those proponents. And they say, I mean, it's an English saying that if you convince somebody against their own opinion, they're still of the same opinion. Do you have champions who possibly you train on the ground who then would enforce?
Well, we use the religious leaders to help us around so that the community will listen to them. So if they believe in it, then the whole community will eventually. Yeah.
Okay.
So change doesn't come overnight.
All right. Peter, what other support would you expect from the different governments? Legislation is great, but there is the question of enforcement. There is the question of ensuring that that culture changes over time to a point where now we're not using enforcement, but it's become part of us. What support would you possibly desire from the different governments?
I would say coordination would be great, actually strengthening the coordination and allocating budgets to ending FGM. That's a challenge because we have very small budgets allocated. So it's so important to strengthen the coordination, allocate the national and even county budgets to ensure that happens. And we also need government support in terms of reaching out to community leaders so that they can establish the new norm and even encourage public declarations. By the way, we have seen public declarations are so important because they encourage communities to stand strongly and really take up the new, the new norm. So the government also enforcement of the registration, making sure that the law as it has been passed is enacted so that it's enforced, and people know that it works. So it's so important to ensure that the anti-FGM law works in every country so that people can know that if they violate it, then there'll be punitive action. There'll be punishment. So, and also creating private, I think we need multi-sectoral partnerships and also collaboration. Government departments, be it health, education, and all ministries need to work in concert so that they actually handle, FGM in its entirety. And also bring in the private sector, initiatives and stakeholders. So the government can do a lot in terms of opening up this space, encouraging all people to act so that we leave no one behind.
All right. And Honorable Chemtai, do you see a need to have community champions on the ground who ensure that this narrative is continued even after, AMREF has left or AMREF has, have their meetings in boardrooms in the cities, but on the ground, how do you ensure that this culture change is actually being effective?
Actually, what the government has done is to have schools. We have 3 girls' schools that are like shelters. Those ones who have survived FGM go to those schools to study in those schools. So at the end of the day, they come out as volunteer champions, just like me, because I know what it means. AMREF may not do much, and it will come at a specific time and goes. But we need these ones who still have to preach. And of course, as my sister from Ethiopia has talked about the religious leaders. They're doing tremendous job. They tell them if they cut you, go to hell. I mean, they preach it as a gospel, and it helps as well. And even education. And our government has put a small budget to the local government, so they use it to sensitize the community. Every function, they speak about FGM, and they keep encouraging every girl child. They tell them, if you went for this, this is what happens. If you did this, this happened. We want you to do this and this. And of course, we told them that if you are cut, remember, you'll never go to school and you'll never get a job. And some of them, they're told, if you are cut, you'll never become a member of parliament like Honorable Chemtai.
But isn't that lying to the community? Because really,
no, some people pick it and it's not lying, but it helps. Because if you don't go to school, you can't go to parliament anyway. So it's one of the ways of encouraging them that you have to avoid these bad cultures so that you can become relevant to your community.
To your community.
Yeah.
All right, we'll soon need to have your closing remarks. And maybe let me start with you. Hewart, what is it that you'd expect to get out of the conference that's taking place in Nairobi? By the end of it, what is it that you'd like to see achieved?
I would like to see all of us being champions, and that I'm expecting to learn a lot from the other countries as well. The challenges, that's what I'm expecting from the workshop.
Peter, your expectation of the conference?
Yeah, I expect that the champions will get the skills needful to be able to strongly advocate and mobilize their communities to end FGM. And we are also connecting them to media partners so that they can work in collaboration to bring out their voices and stories. Yeah,
all right, Honorable Chemtai.
I also expect to have AMREF down to the ground and make also visits from different cultures, different countries, like bring women from Uganda, come to Kenya, testify about FGM at the local level. Then from maybe Kenya or Uganda, go to Ethiopia, let them give a life story, a success story, so that they can be motivated and say, oh, so this happened somewhere, they can live it. And because we still believe that if you're not circumcised, like in Ethiopia and some parts of my community, they believe you cannot get married, you cannot have children, you're going to be so pale. So they should take people like us who are well-fed, but we haven't undergone the FGM, but we can become a testimony actually and change communities.
All right, Peter. Yeah. What message would you have? There could be some girls who are watching and possibly are in that dilemma because their community says this. Here we are saying the other thing. So they might be right there in the middle wondering, I want to belong, because part of culture that is so strong is the ability and wanting to belong. And that's why we're talking about some being told, you'll not get married, you're not worth it. They're left to feel unworthy by virtue of the fact that they've not gone through the cut. What message would you have to those girls? And I'll each of you ask you what message you'd have. But let me start with you, Peter.
Okay. I would say to every girl in Kenya and in the world that she matters, that she's here for a reason and she's purposeful. She's equally talented and she has all the potentials just like a boy. And what she needs is the opportunity. And although FGM challenge comes, she needs to reach out to community leaders who may understand, religious leaders who may understand, organizations like AMREF and others who are standing against FGM. There is a way in which we can intervene and she can get support. And she also needs to stand up for that right and also communicate to parents. We have seen girls who are able to really raise up on their rights that I don't want to go through FGM, I want to remain in school, I want to become a doctor. So the dreams of every girl matter, they are varied, and they should stand by that.
What's your message to those girls out there, particularly their confidence? There's some of them who feel, unless I go through the cut, I am not woman enough.
I would tell them to stay strong and to advocate as much as they can, and also to fight against FGM because it's against their rights, and I would tell them to fight for it.
All right, I'll finish with you, Honorable Chemtai, your message to the girls out there.
All the girls out there, I would like to tell them that every part of our body has a function. The finger has a function, the ear, the eye, the hair, every piece of a body has a function. So let them not be lied and accept for their bodies to be cut. Let them first know what is the function of that part of the body that is being cut. And I encourage them to stand strong and fight and know that, let them have their rights and say, as a girl, let them know that their body, everything that is created has a function, and I believe that they will live to see the function of that part of the body that is being cut.
Thank you very much. We'll have to wind it up right there because of time. Honorable Evelyn Chemtai, Member of Parliament, Buko District, Eastern Uganda. Also Peter Ngura, Director and FGM Center of Excellence, Amref Health Africa. And last but not least, Hiwot Girma, who's a clinical pharmacist and FGM advocate in Ethiopia. Thank you for joining us this morning. Well, that's where we're going to wind